Welcome to a new edition of the Famous Interviews with Joe Dimino. On this episode, we talk with UK-based expert LinkedIn profile writer Naomi Johnson. She is an expert at this and has spent the last 10 years helping people position themselves as the go-to expert within their industry and structuring their business so prospects can come to them pre-sold and ready to buy. She is the founder of the Profile.company and the Expert Economy and the author of The Expert Economy. She has a great story. Enjoy this interview.
First of all, Naomi, thank you for taking some time out to talk with me on Jazz today. And, we're coming from Kansas City. Where exactly are you located?
I am located on the south coast of England, near Portsmouth.
Wonderful. So what I'm going to do first and foremost, before we get into your life as a LinkedIn profile author, is I want to know, we've lived through quite a time with COVID over the last 3 years. And I'm curious how you survived that time period and how it's changed the way that not only you live your life, but the way that you conduct business.
Yeah, that's an interesting one, actually, because the way I lived my life before and everything, I actually didn't really notice COVID in that respect. I had been in an office in the middle of 2019. I just moved out of that office. I'd moved into a bigger house, so I had an office at home. And so I was all set up at home when it happened. LinkedIn for me is a very international field. Like today, I've spoken to yourself. I've spoken to someone in India, someone in Tasmania. So my business has been international for a long time. It's cross-border, so it doesn't react to local changes in economies so much. And I'm speaking to so many people and working with people in different economies, it doesn't make that big a difference. Also, I think the other thing that's different is I don't have high volumes of clients. So to find the number that I need across the whole globe, it's not actually a big problem. And then obviously I have been working at home, but I would say also that I worked from home too long. And I was like a frog boiling in water. And I did get to a point when I realized that my whole mindset and everything was completely off. Because I just hadn't been around enough people. I hadn't been hanging out with inspirational minds, having inspirational conversations. And there's something in the physicality of being around people that makes a difference. So now I work at co-working space and I try to get out to actual face-to-face events more, which has been fantastic.
Well, and I guess that's what we learned ultimately during this time period was that community is pretty important. We do need each other as humans, no matter how well technology connects us. So that's kind of been the reverberating theme. So let me ask you this. I'm going to kind of simplify a little bit what you do to a certain degree. And I'm going to put you in front of a bunch of grade school kids, second or third graders at a career day. One of the kids looks up and says, "What do you do for a living?" How do you respond?
Ooh, tough question. So I would probably say, well, you know how mummy and daddy spend a lot of time fiddling on their phones, tapping away, writing things, talking to people. Well, one of the avenues of which they talk to people is through a platform called LinkedIn. And LinkedIn is very much about business. When daddy goes to work and mummy goes to work and they make money, they're doing that. They're meeting people for that through LinkedIn. And instead of just being them having to say, "Oh, hello, I'm this person" every time, what I do is I write them what's called a profile that speaks for them on their behalf and represents, well, that's a big word, says, "This is what I do, this is how I do it, this is why I love to do it." So that somebody anywhere in the world can find this thing about your mum and go, "Oh, yeah, I totally get what she does. I get why she does it, and I want to work with her."
So the one thing that I've noticed that's interesting about LinkedIn, as it's evolved over time, because I've been on the platform for a little while, is that it's almost turned into, this very interactive Facebook kind of component. It seems like they've gone out of their way to make this a place where people don't just check, but that they make it their new destination for social media, so to speak.
Mm. Yeah, they have. Yeah. Is there a question with that? Or
I guess it's kind of a statement. And I mean, you said, it seems like you agree. It's interesting to me how some of these things evolve and we kind of piggyback off of existing technologies, because ultimately all social platforms want as much time as they can get from you. And I think LinkedIn had to have known that they were getting, bartered between all these different services that were interactive. And because of the decision to get interactive, it probably made things much better, and probably better for you too.
Yeah, it's an interesting thing. I mean, the interactive side of things of posting content is really good, because one thing that we have now as an advantage that we didn't have before is that if somebody needed our services and they knew, they would therefore know they had a problem and they were looking for a solution. And through looking for a solution, they would learn keywords and key search terms that they would then go to Google, and that result would come up. Prior to that, they go to the yellow pages. I need a plumber because my, the pipes burst, plumber. There's that association person who solves it. But a lot of us as specialists, we solve problems that people don't actually realize they have, and they definitely don't know the key terms around finding a solution, because they don't know a solution exists, and they're not looking for that solution because they're living in the status quo, thinking this is how life is. There is, and is there a solution to this? Doesn't even cross their mind, because this is what life is it not? But what social media allows us to do is actually bring to people's attention, actually, this is a problem. Things can be better. Your competitors don't have this problem. And other people are suffering the same way. You can solve this, and there are specialists out there. Sometimes people know that they have a problem, they just don't know there's a specialist out there. But when we connect with people and we share content, if we're doing it properly, what we should be doing is bringing people to an awareness of their problem and educating them about that problem, so they get more know-how around it and come to the point of saying, actually, I want to invest in a solution because I'm not happy with where I am. And as to how LinkedIn has evolved, I was just discussing this really recently, actually, that, there's this whole thing about posting content because it's a social platform and that's what it's all about. And a lot of people put a lot of emphasis on getting followers and engagement on their posts. And you'll actually find that the most viral, most popular posts don't translate into business. So it's like, well, what are you actually there for? It's not about these vanity statistics. It's about winning new paid business and doing it in a way that isn't salesy. And when you get started in, when you've got a product to sell and to get out into the world, what you really, in the old days and even now, is like what we want to do is we actually need to leverage trust in our network. We need to go to people we know, pitch what we do, get their feedback on it, and get to the point where people are buying from us. And that's what LinkedIn was originally started for. Reid Hoffman wanted to help people get jobs, and people got jobs who they knew. And through who they knew, new opportunities would open up. And he did it from that jobs perspective. And then obviously it became what it became around entrepreneurship and finding new business and business connections and things, which is fantastic. That was a brilliant evolution. And that would have been about 2009 that happened. And I think that component has really been lost. And what we've come into is almost like a broadcast mentality of posting content on LinkedIn and broadcasting it. So we're posting to broadcast, hoping that somebody picks up on it and somebody wants to work with us, and that we could then connect with them and chat with them and, get them onto a sales appointment. But if you look at actually what networking is and what the greats who did networking and did sales prior to LinkedIn, you went and looked at what they did, got their skills, and then brought their skills back to LinkedIn, you would be leveraging trust in your network, and you would be hopping from introduction to introduction and getting very warm leads. And so, I think that it has become quite misguided in terms of its focus and how people are using it. And there's almost kind of like laziness of, well, not lazy, I think it's more being scared. I don't want to do sales calls. I'll just post content and wait for people to come to me. Suggest cold calling now and people have a heart attack. Why would you do that? It's so outdated. Well, posting content on LinkedIn and just posting for hoping is almost worse.
Yeah, for sure. So let me ask you this. When you were in the third grade, what did you want to do when you grew up?
What would that be? 7 years old?
Yeah.
I wanted to be an actress, actually. And I pursued that until I was 19. Oh, no, 17. I was 17 and I gave it up.
So how did all of these seeds begin for you? Talk to me a little bit about childhood and how all of these, seeds began for you to become who you are today.
Yeah, so what's interesting for me is my choice of education after high school. So high school, obviously, you get told these are the subjects that you are studying. Then for us in the UK, when you get to 16, you do what's called A-levels, which I think may have changed now, actually. But it's 2 years of study, and you typically choose 3 to 4 subjects and study them for 2 years in what's called college. And then for us, we stay at home for that. And I chose to study psychology, business, and communication studies, which is so intriguing now that business is what I'm in. Business is what I talk about. Psychology comes into massive play when it comes to the LinkedIn profile and sales as well. And then communication is, I write people's LinkedIn profiles. I pitch people. I'm working out how to communicate in the most clear and effective way. And it's just no coincidence that that's what I do, because I actually am trained in how to communicate. And it's just so interesting for me. Like, a decision I made, for me, it's usually 16 you make that decision. I made the decision at 18 because I went to work for 2 years first. But it was just so interesting that that's what I chose as my subjects. And as I said, then I went to work. So I went and studied drama at college for 3 months. And then I was like, do you know what? I don't want to spend my life pretending to be somebody else. I need to get to grips with who I am and be okay with who I am. I need to heal this broken part of me first and not try and pretend to be somebody else. So I went into a corporate job and I did that for 18 months. And I was just like, no, this won't do. I've got to get an education. I've got to know why I'm clicking this button and clicking this button. I can't just be told, follow my directions. I want to think for myself. So that's what took me back into education. And then I self-funded myself through 4 years of university as well, and a year living in Australia. And then I worked for the Students' Union for 3 years, and then I started my business right then, which is way too young. I was 27 when I started my business.
So talk to me a little bit about what motivates you. Every day we wake up, we have things we want to do. What is it that propels you through the day to do what you do?
I think it's that I have always wanted to see people excel, and I've always wanted to see people achieve their goals. And I've always had this brain that can figure out how to do it. So I used to annoy people in the playground at school because they'd give me this whimsical wish of what they'd like to do for a career. And I'd take them very seriously and I'd figure out exactly how they could do it. And they just weren't expecting it. So it's been a theme for me constantly. Then I'm always, I just love to hear what people's businesses are, what their passions are, what their interests and expertise is, and then untangle it all and go, well, the way you're communicating, that's not going to resonate with your audience. And you've also not got these foundations in place for the business. Like, what's your call to action? Like, why is somebody going to get on a phone call with you? What are you going to talk to them about on that phone call? What are your packages that you're offering? And how are you going to take them through a transformation? These things are many, many questions that people have to answer, and they get very confused figuring all those things out. It's a lot of moving parts if you don't have someone to bounce back with you and nail it down. And I just love working with people to nail it down and go, yeah, that's my expertise. That's the problem I solve. That's how I need to communicate it to my marketplace so they get it. And then seeing them excel. And yeah, it is working with people to do that ultimately. I'd love to spend most of my day just doing that. Obviously, I've got to do my own marketing as well, which I do enjoy to some extent. And I love to write. I've written 3 books as well. So I like to write down that knowledge too and communicate it. So yeah.
So if you have a dream tonight, you run into the younger version of yourself, and you could give that young version a piece of advice based on the wisdom that you've gained and the roads you've been down in your life. What would you tell your young version?
Yeah, so there's this really good analogy that I read about a year or two ago, and I wish I had read it when I was 18 or 19. And it basically goes something along the lines of this. A man is, his daughter's leaving school, and he's buying her a car, and he hands her, the keys to a classic car that he's had. And he says, this is your car, but first, before you take it on, I need you to get it evaluated and see how much it's worth. So take it to the pawnbroker. So she takes it to the pawnbroker, and he says, I'll give you $500 for it, because it's old and it's just old. So about $500. And she reports back to her dad, and the dad goes, okay, well, do you want to just take it down to the dealership, down at the, car dealership, secondhand cars, and see what they say? And she comes back and she says, they said they'd give me £3,000 for it. He goes, right, okay. There's an antique car show going on in the village next week. Let's take it there. And she takes it there, and all these people swoon around, and wow, this is incredible. And the car gets valued for £100,000 because it's a classic, very rare, and it is in high demand. And I wish I would have heard that when I was younger and understood it. And this is what I would say to my younger self. If you are not valued where you are, leave. If people are treating you badly, treating you with disrespect, even when you're young, just walk away, because you're in the wrong place. And all of those experiences of people they're just not your vibe, as I say, they're just not your people. All those experiences where you stick with the people who are not your people, and you allow to speak over you in that way, create experiences. And those experiences create your personality, and they create your reality. And then you start thinking, this is the way life is. This is how life is. This is who I am in the world. Actually, it's not. I've got really good now at noticing when these people are not my people and they're not treating me with respect, and to walk away. And, the Queen of England's a perfect example of this. She shows up somewhere, she thinks everywhere she goes smells of fresh paint, right? Because they respect her so much, they decorate everywhere she goes and make sure it looks perfect before she gets there. Did get there. And it's exactly that. It's make sure you're around people that value your skills, and want you to be part of what they're doing, because everything creates an experience, and not everyone's going to treat you with respect. You've got to be in the right environments, but you do deserve it. No matter who you are, you deserve it. You deserve to have the best treatment. So yeah, that's what I would say to my younger self. Leave.
So what? Yeah, sure. So in your life so far, what are you the proudest of? When you think about everything you've done, what stands out as something that you're the proudest of?
It's an interesting one, because sometimes I have a massive go at myself about my lack of achievement and things I don't have that the regular person has. I've not had the opportunity to have children. I've not had the opportunity to get married, and just different things like that, which the opportunity feels like it's almost too late now. I mean, for one of those, it is. But then I have to stop and I have to realise that that's not actually the measure of success. And the thing that actually I have to be most proud of is who I've become. I always say that entrepreneurship will push you to the very edge of yourself, and it will show you, if you want to grow as a person, this is the one arena that will make you do it fastest. From where I've come from to where I am now, people don't believe my story because it's so radically different. I was socially inept young girl, very uncomfortable in most situations, used sarcasm as a mechanism, to survive. I would say that I wasn't born with social skills. I had to figure them out. So that's from a very, very young age. To who I am now, who is, I'm just very, very different in all of those environments, and how I carry myself and who I am, and also how loving and caring I am as a person as well. It's all of those experiences that have made me that. And in each of those experiences, some of them quite harrowing, I've had a choice. I've had a choice of who I want to become. And I like who I've become. And I think for all of the choices I had and the need for education around how to change and how to be better, I've put the time in and I've done the hard work and I've made it happen. So, yeah, I think, it's an odd answer almost, but it's who I've become from who I was,
So everyone out there has a perception of you, an idea of who they think you are, your family, your friends, your clients, but ultimately you live your life. What's your perception of you? Who do you think you are?
Oh, you do. This is good, isn't it? Who do I think I am? Well, there's some parts of who I think I am that I really need to shift. Sometimes I can get really caught up in some negative sides that have been put upon me, that I need to choose to be different and choose to believe other things. I believe I'm a very kind, caring person. I believe that I have a lot of compassion. I think that I'm very, I do. You do have to say this as an entrepreneur. I am very good at what I do. And I do love to help people. I have very good comedic timing sometimes, and I can be the life of the party, but I can also not as well. So I swing between introvert and extrovert. And I'm a very hardworking, very dedicated person. So when I say I'm going to work on something and make something happen, and I really commit to it and really get it done.
Wonderful. Naomi, this has been great. Thank you for opening up. Thank you for giving me your time and your story. I really appreciate it.
No problem. It was lovely to be with you.
Thanks for tuning in to another famous interview with Joe Dimino, where we cover the world of art, literature, business, spirituality, music, and more from around the globe. If you want to hear more interviews, visit the Famous Interviews with Joe Dimino channel on YouTube. You can also find us on Spotify and Apple Podcasts. Thanks again for listening, and until next time.